spread. In terms of the global economy, we've seen supply chains disrupted. You know that China is like the biggest importer of crude oil, and that is what really led to the OPEC plus allies agreeing to a meeting. Couldn't come to an agreement at the meeting, and then we just saw oil prices slump to 30. And like you said, I'm not sure about what the prices are right now, but you might have some below 30. In terms of the Nigerian economy, we know that we are already at a, was already at a deficit for government.
Mm. And that's already showing its signs. And you know what's really scary for me is the fact that going back to the benchmark, the oil benchmark, we know that it was pegged at 57 naira with the hope that
Yeah.
Nigeria would talk between should we keep cash, should we spend, buy stuff, shouldn't we buy? Where do we stand? How do we like live?
It's tricky, really, and it depends on you personally. Like you said, we saw the stock market dive last week,
Mm-hmm.
global stock market and Nigerian stock market as well. And then we've seen the dollar actually being affected as well. So the key thing now is how the CBN responds. Because we've seen the CBN, they came out with a response saying last week that they have no plans to devalue the naira, because for them there's like a net effect. The fact that we're not importing as much because of the disruption in China made them able to protect the naira to a large extent, right? Because if we had continued the huge demand for dollar, whereas there was this huge crash in oil prices, we'll have seen the CBN really struggle.
Yeah.
But because there was this decline in the demand for dollars, the import levels fell. So the city was able to manage it, and they came out saying they have no plans to devalue the naira. Now we saw the stock market fall. Why? Because the CBN came out, I think, last year to say that two things must happen before they devalue the naira. One, we want to see oil prices crash below $30, which is probably happened now.
Yeah.
The second thing was the reserves. Second event occurred, and everybody's asking questions. So the foreign investors got really worried, and decided to take their money out of the stock market. So we saw the stock market crash. Now, for the everyday man on the street, the question is, what can your naira buy?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that's how it's going to affect
Yes.
you. If we cannot import, because we're such an import-dependent country, prices are going to go up, right? So you're going to be affected with your disposable income, probably going to buy less things than you used to buy before. Luckily, we have food in Nigeria. We don't import as much as we should. Hopefully, it doesn't really affect the global supply chain, or rather the local supply chain. Because one of the things we've seen, which is like, I would say a positive effect, is the fact that because a lot of countries in Europe cannot import from China, they started looking to other countries like Nigeria to import food. So we've seen some local agricultural processing companies actually meet orders in Europe as well. So that might actually help in terms of the fact that we might be able to afford food. But in terms of other things, that you can buy, definitely prices are going to go up. Definitely going to affect the man on the street. The CBN respond, but their reserves are dropping as well. So it's a very, very tricky place to be at right now. Everybody's trying to watch to see what happens, and trying to see what Russia does, what Saudi Arabia does, because we're really just stuck in between.
Let's talk about Russia-Arabia relationship. Good that you touched on it, because there's COVID-19 on one end, and there's a trade war between Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Russia.
Yeah, can you give us just a scope of what's going on, and if you can break it down in in lay terms, so people, yes, can
I'll try.
understand, and then the impact as well on oil prices.
So Russia and Saudi Arabia are some of the biggest exporters of crude oil in the world. And because they are also strong members of the OPEC plus, which is OPEC plus allies, other countries, they try to control the oil prices, because if oil prices drop, it will affect the country revenue in those countries. Now, Russia also is highly dependent on crude oil, like we are in Nigeria, although they have gas much more than Nigeria does. But for Saudi Arabia, the key thing we need to know about those countries, in Russia and Saudi Arabia, the cost for them to produce per barrel is about $3, right? So it really doesn't, whatever is going on right now, they can go as far as, they can go barrel, $3 to $5. That's what it costs them. So for Saudi and what's it called now? Russia. The key thing now is what we see, what we hear from reports that I've read, is the US used to be a country that was also really a huge importer of crude oil. But because in the past few years they have, the shaling industry has, really developed, so they have become less dependent on oil. So because of what's going on, they know that if the price falls below $20, right, that industry in the US will be affected. So for Russia, they want to try and squeeze the US industry. So it's a lot of power play going on right now. And then for Saudi Arabia wants to show Russia that, look, I can actually production of oil. Because China wasn't importing as much, they wanted to cut the production of oil so that prices would not drop. But because they could not agree, right, Saudi Arabia decided to even produce more, and then Russia decided not to, play ball, and then the prices crashed anyway. And we knew that once prices continue to crash, it would affect the US as well. So there's this huge power play going on, and countries like Nigeria, Angola will just be caught in the middle because we don't have any say. Our cost of production is really high at $30, and if it drops, it's going to affect our budget. So we're just saying, okay, Russia and Saudi Arabia, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to come to the table to discuss, or is this power play going to go on? Because really, they can afford for it to go on for a bit longer.
So is the cost dependent on cost of production, that is, for a country? Is it dependent on capacity, production capacity?
A lot of
in terms
things.
of how many refineries we have,
capacity, infrastructure, the effectiveness and efficiency of your infrastructure, so many things. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. You mentioned something when you were speaking, and I'd love for you to touch on this very quickly, and that's gas. You talk about the fact that Russia has more gas than Nigeria.
Well, they are able to
produce.
More.
We've talked about gas and the underutilization of gas in Nigeria and the revenue loss in that instance. Now we see that the price of crude oil is crashing, and need to look to other sources. Can you just touch on, do you think we could possibly match Russia and countries that are large producers of gas if we took it a bit more seriously and didn't just waste our resources?
Well, we can. The truth is, we can probably match Russia's numbers, but I really don't know what time frame or what timelines it would take.
Yeah.
I don't have all the numbers, but we do have the resources to have, additional, what would I call it now? Additional factors production, push products like gas, for instance. I mean, we're all expecting the Dangote refinery to, finish up next year, 2021, and then help probably drive some value along the oil refinery value chain, so we don't have to be so dependent on other countries to give us the refined oil. But there's still so many things that need to be done to things like gas, right? I think that it's still a far cry from where we need to be, right? But I think that is something that can really be definitely looked into by the government.
Thank you. We'll be looking at stock prices have crashed. People are thinking, where will I put my money? People are asking, buy dollars, and then
there's a lot of panic.
Yes, panic. But we want to talk about this one, and I know for a number of people it affects them, and they want to understand what their options are. Hopefully, Tomie will be able to give us some tips as to what we should be looking into. This is Lagos Stocks 91 here on Smooth 98.1. Stay tuned.
Thank you. No problem.
Well done.
Hi there. Let me tell you something.
That gas question threw me off a bit, but it's fine.
Yeah, but you did. But I was going to. You might not even be an energy expert, so you're just speaking from a purely financial point of view. Which is fine. You answered it very well. Well, when you started speaking, I was like, it would take a gas expert to be talking about the process or how it would take. But I just wanted your statement on that, which you did very well. Thank you.
We know you don't like a queues, and that's why you.
So we're coming back in.
Created a lounge for your comfort in every.
And so when we come back, we'll look at we'll then touch on the impact on investment. You already touched on FDIs. Or, in terms of them pulling out, which is responsible for the stock market crashing. But for us as local investors, should we start changing our money? Should we, people are talking about gold now, that maybe gold is the safest thing to put your money in. Our government bonds, do you think government is going to release it to try and raise capital?
But it's not even accessible to everyday people.
Oh, it's not. So, can we not access it through our banks?
No.
We can't. So,
Okay, so the thing is, the limit for the minimum for a euro bond, for instance, $200,000. Right. So there are some companies that break it down further. Like you can go to the mutual funds for $1,000, $5,000.
So,
Providence Bank, future forward banking.
Mike's up.
Welcome back to the show. You're listening to Smooth 98.1. This is the final segment for Smooth Breakfast, and it's called Lagos Talks 91. And Smooth Breakfast with me, Valentine Ohu.
And Ayo Mairo Ese.
Our special guest today for our Wednesday special conversation, Tomie Balogun. She's a millennial investor and founder of the Green Investment Club. She's here to speak with us about financial implications of COVID-19 on investments and economics, and generally how you should spend, how should you make more money or save money around this period where the global financial crisis is hitting a lot of countries. Questions have been asked around the impacts of the all price crash, that's crude price crash around the world, the price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. How does that affect you as a common man? People have been spreading rumors about buying dollar and converting into dollar. Some people say keep more cash. How does this apply to the ordinary man in terms of how we should spend these days? What should I do? Because it's a bit confusing for the layman on the streets. Should he go to the nearest and to say, "Oh, God, change my money, my 5,000 naira to dollar"? What does that do for us? So,
Well, I think it's a tricky question, and in the world of investments, you have to be very careful to give generic answers because everybody has a personal story. So you always have to ask for the personal circumstances of that person. Because if you do not have recurring expenses in dollars, or if you're not paying school fees in dollars or something, it might not be wise for you to go switch your money to dollars right now, because then you might get cash strapped, right? If you do not have regular income in naira, and you continue to have expenses in naira, you need to find a balance as well. So yes, there are fears about the value of the currency. We've had this over time, and I always say this, that ever since I've been born, I've never seen the naira appreciate, right? So that's something to watch out for. So it is definitely a great way to preserve the value of your call it wealth, or your investment portfolio, or your cash, definitely. But it's not something for you to, you don't have to change all of your money, right? There are mutual funds that can do with $1,000, or with minimum, and see that, okay, you're preserving some amount of your investment portfolio. It's very important to diversify your portfolio at this time, right? So think about preserving something in a stable currency. That's definitely a wise thing to do. But you also have to consider, would I continue to have cash flows in naira, right? So that's investment decisions. Okay. And then in terms of the stock market, what's going on, I've seen that right now this is time to actually be very calm and seize opportunities. It's funny because one of the reports we hear is if you're familiar with Extra Breath Away, Warren Buffett's company, he's been stockpiling cash for years because there's been a boom in the global stock market, for a market decline, because that's when the best investors buy great companies at a discount. So what you want to do is check out some opportunities right now. Last week was really, really good. A lot of really, really good companies, not all companies in the stock market are good, were selling at a major discount. Now, if you're thinking of investing long term, that was a great opportunity for you to get in to the right companies at a discount, right? So investors always know that market declines are the best times to seize opportunities, because if you're buying them when there's a boom, you're probably not getting the best value, right? So I always say, I've been saying this, that this is an opportunity if you have cash, because right now cash is king. But you also have to understand that the stock market is a long-term investment. Okay, so if that is something you want to consider as part of your portfolio, then definitely get into it as soon as you can. We've seen a rally this week, so we've seen some stocks start, going up in value this week. But last week was a really great week. We can also look to alternative investments. We expect some distressed sales in real estate. So if you do find value there, please get in at a discount as much as you can. We've seen agricultural projects. I'm very careful with saying this because we know that even with what's going on right now, there's going to be a lot of scams. We've seen that happen a lot in the past, few months, because everybody's looking for anywhere they can double their money. Guys, investment doesn't work that way, right? If anybody's just promising you 100 to 100% without a proper business model, you probably want to look into it further. Okay, so I'll just think maybe you should ask me another question before I go.
I was going to ask you. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say that the reason why I didn't want to interrupt you was because I didn't want to disrupt your flow. It was really important. I think this is probably the meat of our conversation this morning. Listening to what you have to say with regards to what should I be looking at in terms of putting my money in. You mentioned last week about there being such a decline that there have been a great buying to some great companies. I heard some wonderful companies selling at 20 something naira per share, 10 naira per share, and it was almost ridiculous. So don't if you have a clothes sale where they say 70% sales slash, and then you shop for the winter, Black Friday sales, almost like that. Now, what are the things that you should look out for? You mentioned that not all companies in the stock market or in the stock market are good. What should you be looking out for if you want to buy stocks? And then should you be, I know you probably have to go through a stockbroker as you wouldn't be able to do it directly, but what should you be looking out for in terms of good and bad investments, particularly in the stock market?
So it's really not industry specific. You can look into multiple industries, but First of all, you have to look at the company value in the marketplace. Have you seen consistent growth over a period of time? Now, if you look at the block between 2015 to 2020, that has been like the worst economic disruption we've actually experienced in Nigeria. We had the devaluation of the naira from 150 to 360. We had so many things happen between that time stretch, but some companies still managed to double their revenue, even in that period, right?
Yeah.
Specifically in the banking industry and even in the FMCG industry, you find some companies that actually continue to grow in spite of what was happening in the economy. Now, those are companies that have continued to create value in spite of the economic situation. So you can trust that in the next 5 or 10 years, those companies will continue to grow. Those are definitely companies to consider investing in, right?
Yeah.
So because you've seen that in spite of it all, and then okay, they provide value, they're strong in the economy,
Yeah.
and they consistently pay dividend, right?
Mm.
Key things to look out for, because something that's
How
not
do you
paying dividend.
know? Is it through? Do you ask for their annual report? How do you
Well,
test
typically they
these
do
things?
put it down in the annual reports, the financial
Yeah.
statements. But if you do not know how to read your financial statement, reach
Yeah.
out to your stockbroker and ask just what are the dividend-paying companies, what companies are paying dividend consistently by a period of time, and you see that because for you to pay them, that means you're earning revenue, you're making profit, and you paid some of it to your shareholders. Because what you do is when you buy stock, you're taking ownership interest in the company, a shareholder in that company. You should be interested in what's going on in that company,
Yeah.
right? So key things to look out for: how is that company performing in that industry? Secondly, has that company consistently be providing value, earning revenue in spite of the economy? Because we live in a very volatile economy,
Yes,
right?
we
It's
do.
not an excuse. Some companies have not done so well, but some companies have a dividend, right? So with the global market as well, we see a lot of companies stock prices crashing and people just buying up. Cash is king, right? So we see that. And alternative assets as well. Like I said, agricultural projects. I've had requests from a lot of agricultural companies because they've seen, a lot of agricultural commodities go up to 10 times the price for
Yes,
demand,
yes.
right? So there are opportunities in spite of what's going on with coronavirus, and great for any
Of so much
much, yeah,
negativity.
yeah.
But you find that some of these agricultural investments they have a time span of 6 months to 1 year and some beyond that. But are there investments that the other man could actually put in for shorter term?
Well, not so much. If you wanted to do shorter term investment, it would not be worth it, because right now most of the opportunities you find in the money market that are quite short term, money market securities are quite short term, 0 to 365 days, are earning or providing rates less than inflation rates. So
Yeah.
it's definitely not worth it. I mean, our current inflation rate is 12.2%. So why do a treasury bill at 3% or 4% or
Well, that
5%?
is reason.
That is what?
As in the 12.22 it has increased.
Yes, that's the
to about
recent,
12.8,
12.2, yeah, the inflation rate, right? So you really, I mean, unless you really need to keep your funds liquid,
Yes.
right? Because with money market, you can liquidate in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you should consider that. But honestly, if you really want to earn on your funds at this time, because you're going to be at negative growth rate, treasury bills 3%, 4%. We have some bonds, right? But they are really long term. So you really need to consider what your financial goal is. You need to consider what your budget is. You also need to consider your stage of life. I think that the younger you are, the more risk you can take.
Yes.
And then if you do have a family, you do need cash flows. You're probably paying school fees, and so many grocery expenses coming up, rent.
Yeah.
So you need cash flows. That should also go into your investment decisions. And then finally, your risk appetite. Not everybody is risk aggressive. If you do know that you're a conservative person, please stick to what you know. Do invest in what you do not understand. So those are the factors to consider before you make an investment decision, really.
Okay, so Cruz has a question here, and if you'd like to send in a question or perhaps comment on our conversation this morning, please feel free to do so. The number is WhatsApp 0809 444 On Twitter, it's at smooth981fm. Just use the hashtag Lagos Talks 981, and it's just looking at investment or the impact of COVID-19 on investment and economics. Cruz is asking if it's a good time to invest in pharmaceutical companies that do research at this time. Also, going to the entertainment front, are there movie producers who may be willing to tell the coronavirus story that we can invest our money in? Investment with return on investments, not donations.
Interesting space, right? Pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria, not a lot of information, and not so many of them on the stock market, right? So unless if they're looking to raise like commercial papers or something, but you also have to have that track record of that company. I mean, is this something that they're really going to use for research, or is just something to raise to do some, typical market structure or something? You have to consider that. If you was in the more developed countries, definitely a great time to look into some companies doing some great work. Entertainment industry is quite interesting because it is risky. Investing a movie that's about to be released, you have no idea if that movie is going to do great or not. It really depends on how the public accepts the movie or anything. So I have heard stories. I've met investors that have invested in one or two movie projects and earned great returns. So the question is, are you willing to take the risk?
All right, so what's your risk appetite? Are you
Yeah.
risk aggressive or risk
Aggressive.
passive? All right, let's talk about the valuation of the naira. Earlier today, okay, we need to go on a break, but I'll just set that because earlier today we took a story on the fact that the Senate is mulling ideas to devalue the naira and also to reduce the budget or to revise the budget. You also mentioned earlier that the CBN have come out with a statement that they are not looking to devalue the naira, and this has been their position for. In fact, that Emefiolonomics has been his position for a while. But now they're saying that market trends and what's going on might have to force their hands. I'd love to hear your thoughts when we come back from the break on the impact of the devaluation of the naira. You touched on it at one point, going from $150 to $360, such a jump. Yeah, 40 naira. When we come back from that break, we'll be talking about this and looking at how this impacts the layman, the everyday Nigerian. This is Smooth 98.1. We'll be back.
Future forward banking.
I know.
My name is Ohu.
I know.
Smooth 98.1.
No, I can't say it because we're straight. that was the look at her face.
You see, when we set
What's
out to do
happened there?
banking, we didn't just
All right,
want
so
to do
thank you so
usual.
much.
We
I
wanted
love
to
the
do
way you
different.
speak.
Yes.
Of course, you're a trainer, so you speak with a lot of authority
Clarity.
and yes,
Thank
authority.
you.
Break it down, authority and
That's a
very.
big deal coming from you guys.
Oh no, it's very.
We are very import dependent. We import a lot. That's the value of when there's a devaluation, it always hits us really bad.
Yeah.
But if the CBN, instead of spending all this money to protect the naira, puts it in the economy will grow. I mean, the World Bank said that we're probably going to continue to be the poverty capital of the world because the economy is growing at 2.4%, while population is growing at a higher rate. And as long as our population is growing higher than the economy, we can't keep up, right? So I think there should be a lot more focus on structure, financing in the country, encouraging a lot of industries in Nigeria to grow and produce, good output that we can also export to other countries. And once that happens, we see that the value of our products probably be attractive and cheaper for other countries to buy. Right? With this disruption in supply value chain now, Nigerian companies in Nigeria have been fantastically positioned, especially because we don't have like a huge what's it called now, case of a lot of people having coronavirus.
Yeah.
A great opportunity for us to start exporting to Europe.
Absolutely.
Right? And increase the income from all of those countries.
Do you know what? There are a number of seminars coming up now with regards. So I don't know if you've seen it as well. Sessions on how to get people to start exporting their products. People are looking. I know because I know a number of friends who are in manufacturing and they are attending seminars like this. There's one that's happening, I think, sometime this week, where they are asking people to bring their products. They want to see them to see if they can export. Like you mentioned, that while it can be dark and great for a number of economies around the world, in terms of agriculture and certain things that they cannot get from China or Asian countries at the moment, it's a great time for us
because we
to
really
push that
produce these things very, very easily and cheaply.
And also a great time for scams too.
Oh yeah, one needs to be careful about that.
Talking about that, so certain people have been asking this question. As far back as 4 months, have been asking about the advent of apps that are available and make it somewhat offer solutions for investing in foreign portfolios like in the US. The question came in here this morning from Toby. He's asking about a particular app for buying US stocks. Now, generally speaking, is that a safe route to take?
My concern with apps like that, and most of them have reached out to me, is in the global stock market, the US stock market, you need a social security number to own stocks, really. So what you're really buying with those apps, buying the fund, really. And my concern is, yes, they partner with some brokers in the US, but what happens? I mean, I'm not trying to be pessimistic or anything, but it's just trying to look out for the worst case scenario, mitigating risk. What happens if the company in Nigeria shuts down? How do you really claim your money back? Who do you go to? Because you really cannot go to the US stock market and say, I own these shares. If you buy
In whose
stock,
name?
if you buy stocks in Nigeria, even if you're a stockbroker, I can walk into CSS and say that this shares were bought in my name, and claim your share. So that's really my concern. So if you have the risk appetite to trade those stocks, because what you're really doing is trading. It's not really ownership.
Mm.
You're trading stocks, so you can actually try and trade, get in, get out as soon as you want to. Fine, but if you're speaking about ownership, I haven't seen a company who's able to answer the question of what would happen if I wanted to really claim ownership of my foreign stocks.
Yes. So I hope that answers your question, Toby. Big T says Nigeria has no economy. Economics dictates that as crude oil prices are low, the pump price of fuel should be low. But it's the same, 145 naira. So which companies drive our so-called economy? In the US, you can say Apple, Google, Amazon, and Yahoo, etc. So what do we have on the NSC? How much is the dollar now? Just shot CBN, he says, because we're running an AI
Really key economy. Oh dear. Well, let's talk about the budget. Some people understand the impact of the amount of money that is being it has been proposed by the government to spend in a fiscal year. When the budget details were released, a number of economists complained or highlighted the fact that it was too small for the population that we have. If we're looking at other populations, other countries with the size of Nigeria's population, they're doing like 10 times more of what our budget provision was. But that was the case. Now there are talks of reducing it even further. Please, we sometimes think that these things are big things, so it affects the government, but we are the government. It will come back down to us. We know cases where governments cannot pay, state governments can't pay salaries.
Yeah.
We've had to borrow for that. We were going to borrow 27 point something billion dollars. That has been suspended. It hasn't even been approved. If there's a reduction, what will be the implication for the normal Nigerian? Would we be able to sustain projects such as, we have the social intervention investment projects, we have projects like we have the newly revised minimum wage, we'll be able to sustain projects like this?
So what happens when you cut budgets is government spending is going to get cut. Really, and we know that in a country like Nigeria, government spending is very important to drive the economy.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but while the private sector is growing, the government spending, especially in states that are not like Lagos or Harcourt or like the core states that are very dependent on the civil service, you find that most people don't really get any funds until the contract is approved or until they pay salaries. So if there's a cut in the budget, there's going to be a cut in government spending, and it's definitely going to affect the disposable income of the everyday man on the street. So you're going to find with less money being able to do a lot of things. You're going to find, especially in states that are very dependent on civil service,
Yes.
you'll find businesses not being able to, continue to grow because they love. So what this gives an opportunity for credit, actually, right? Because I always like to see the opportunity in everything.
Please, we want to see we don't want to see people happen. We want the opportunity.
It gives an opportunity for credit, because if you look at global economies, actually credit drives a lot of growth in those economies as well. That said, there's a limit to which you can become a bubble, like we saw in the US. But it's an opportunity for people. We've seen the CBN trying to push banks to increase the lending rate to 65%, 70%. We've seen a lot of new young microtech companies making a lot of lending available to the everyday man on the street, even without collateral. One of the companies I work with, for instance, gives out loans to government workers in Nasarawa. It will shock you. Those guys borrow 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, to just get by. So we'll see an increase in credit. My own concern is, would they be able to pay back, right? So if they can pay back, basically borrow at the level of which they can pay back, maybe it will still help. And the CBN is definitely trying to balance things out, knowing that, okay, this will be the impact. So it's always about the balancing act. You saw the Trump the statement, the press release yesterday, pushing $1 trillion into the economy, and based on that, the stock markets just went up. The government will always have to step in, but it's how they step in that matters.
America has money to push trillions.
So we're really going to get into the private sector, right? So for us in our investment club, as for instance, we invest in microcredit companies. They on lend to other people. So if you're in the private sector, you have funds, please put it into something that would also make some economic impact right now.
Thank you. All right, we're going to break. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up the show, getting your final statements on this. and then time to say goodbye.
Right.
It's been really great chatting with you this morning. I
Thank
hope
you.
that people who are listening are able to get a bit of a grasp on this current economic situation. And of course, we have our daily business shows here on Smooth 90.1. Tomie Balogun here with us on Smooth 90.1. Do you know it's boring, no?
Because, so Tommy, I was going to ask.
I refuse to be worried.
Yeah. I mean, that's a
Because
good thing.
for
I'm
me, it's
glad
just
you're being
like
positive.
speaking to people that I was speaking to one of my mentors and bosses. He's been investing for 25 years, and he says like, look, this we always have the cycles. Right, we would always have the cycles. I mean, if the naira could be from 150 to 360,
Yeah, sure. Go on. Go on.
the naira could be that bad, like over 100%,
We still
then
survived it.
we still
Yeah,
survived
we
it.
did.
Right,
Because
so
I remember in 2016, was it 2016?
yeah,
2006 when
yeah.
the thing rose to 360.
You even got to 500 at some point.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
is.
I was so scared. I was like, how are we
People
going
were
to do
enjoying their
this?
children.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it was really bad.
So my question now is, how you advise stock? Are you
No, it's
comfortable?
fine. I can't even.
Okay.
I'm just sitting up here.
So in terms of buying stocks, right? How what's the minimum?
You can even buy 100 if you want. Key thing is you have to consider,
The more I buy, the more profits, right?
yeah,
Obviously.
build up over time. Yeah, so you can buy stock. Yeah, stocks like that are really good. In fact, for me, a big one is Nestle. Nestle fell below 1,000. That's a big deal. Like, Nestle is one company that has really stayed strong.
Mad, oh. Honestly,
That's at its highest peak. Nestle was 1,500.
so if I have 100,
You want to do what? What's your goal? What's your goal?
uh, to keep my stocks profitable.
No,
That's it.
are you willing to? I mean, is that something you can leave for 5, 10 years?
Yes.
You can.
Yes.
Yeah, put in stock market.
Right.
Zenith, Jenny,
I
GT.
cannot buy. No, no, seriously.
No, really, because I had a stock market class over the weekend and we did a lot of analysis on stocks. So I can
Because
tell
yesterday
you
I was
that.
following the trends. I follow some stock analysts showing the dips and everything. And
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
explain how the threshold were
Yeah,
the
the
best.
threshold
So,
the best because Zenith at its peak is probably like 20 naira,
Okay.
right? GT is about 31 naira. Those are great companies that are even at 31 naira, GTB is undervalued. You know, one of the good things about GT, if I want to give this insight, is for every stock you own in GT keeps a portion in dollars.
That's good.
So they already have always buffered themselves against rate and against playing Nigeria.
So it's like
So you
30
should,
naira account and
yeah, and they even lend
account
in
side by
dollars.
side.
So
Wow.
they are really strong. They even lend in dollars. Zenith is also really strong.
This financial thing, we need to take it seriously.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm listening
yeah.
very
Financial
keenly.
intelligence is the future. Good morning, and we hope you're feeling fantastic this morning. It's about money. We're talking about securing our future through investment, especially in the light of the global economic crisis that's just trying to struggle amid the coronavirus jokes. Our special guest, Tomie Balogun, is in the studio with us. She's an investment expert. She gives us insights into how the effects of coronavirus has been shaking the world and how you can stand firm in the face of all this. She's a millennial investor, founder of the Green Investment Club. Tomie, thank you for all the insights you've been giving to us since.
Yeah.
If you've been following us on YouTube, we see how I've been asking questions. What should we invest? What should we put our money and all that?
I'm surprised that people didn't take the opportunity because if you go behind this show, this woman charges, I'm sure, an arm and a leg. If you want to attend her classes, it's not free. So we had this opportunity. Unfortunately, the opportunity is about to close.
So what do you advise the single man, single woman, and the married man and married woman what to do right now just to stay stable and survive beyond the fear?
Oh yeah, I would say the first thing is don't panic, right? This is the right time to start thinking, really critically about your financial goals, right? If you're someone who's single, you have time on your hands, you don't have a lot of recurring expenses right now. This is a great time to get your budget together, to start making investment a bill. Set aside something on a regular basis. I think that's the best thing. Just make investing a lifestyle because sometimes it might be tough if you have to wait until you get the windfall, right? Make it part of your lifestyle. Start setting something aside right now. Start getting a financial education, right? The worst thing you can do right now is to be financially uneducated because you keep making bad investment decisions or you just don't know what to do with your money, right? So that's the best thing. For a married person, start thinking critically about your lifestyle decisions, right? You have to have a budget for your home, how you spend money, what your goals are, if you want to be able to meet recurring expenses, fees, rent, and everything. You want to build multiple streams of income as well. I always say that for me, 4 key ways I build multiple streams of income: my skills, my knowledge, investments, and business. right?
Say that again. Skills, knowledge, investment,
and business. This is not a time to just earn one stream of income. It's tough to earn one stream of income in this economy right now. So you want to look into multiple streams of income. What other things can you do with your skills? What knowledge can you bring? Because that's how I really started. I just started blogging about my knowledge of investing, and this is what I have today. And then your investments, you can earn additional streams of income from your investments. If you want to have a side hustle, yes, you can. We're in a global economy now. You can freelance. There's many things you can do, but this is not the time to just stick to one stream of income. Definitely not, right? So it's really about context and where you are in life, your stage of life. Someone who's older right now, you want to stay safe, right? You want to tidy up your estates, probably set up a trust or something, keep the value of your. There's this story my dad always tells me that when his dad died, he was doing this insurance policy for my dad, and at that time it was 1 naira to £1, right? When my grandfather started. But when he died, they gave my dad 200,000 naira, which had absolutely no value. But if he had continued doing it in pounds, it would have been 200,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow. So some key things you have to consider. Do you want to consider putting your money in a stable currency? Another story is my boss told me that 10 years ago he had 7.2 million. He could have bought an SUV at that time, but he decided to buy a $60,000 house in the US. Today, 7.2 million is $20,000. Right? And that house is already worth about $100,000. So critical decisions need to be made. But remember, stage of life, financial goals, risk appetite, all of these factors matter, right? No generic, there's no hard or fast rules to these things. You have to be very careful how you make your decisions.
Thank you so much, Tomie. Tomie, how can people follow you or find out what the work updates on what you're doing?
Right, so Tomie Balogun, Tomie, don't forget the E, Balogun on Twitter, on Instagram. My website, you can send me an email, hello@tomiebalogun.com.
All right, Tomie with an E.
Yeah,
don't
Tomie
forget.
with an E.
Thank you so much, the Millennial Investor. It's been so fantastic having you, and hopefully we'll have you again here on the show.
Sure,
Lagos, that's all.
And I wish I met you 20 years ago.
That's and take this morning. But from Valentine
and Ayo Mairo Ese.
Have a beautiful morning. Don't forget to watch Mairo Ese's new song, Manifest. It's on YouTube, and it's you can stream on and it's free. You can invest in our lives. Bye-bye.
I go to TPH.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Love it! Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.